Hi, welcome back again. So we're about to see a debate with myself and Mohammad Hijab. You may have seen him around the park or, berating Christian Prince or just embarrassing himself in other ways. Listen out for the massive admission that he makes toward the end of the video. Please do like, share, comment, repent, come to Jesus and subscribe. Check it out. I'll see you on the other side. God bless. Bye bye.
It doesn't say premenstrual.
It says before their menses.
Yeah.
So I'm saying there's two tafsir. One of them says both Maududi. One of them says it could be because they're never going to mention. Like it could be that they have some physical condition. But the other one says, or because they are not yet mature. I like your badge. So do you find a discrepancy then between Sharia?
No, I think that you need to understand how it works. Right? So, first of all, there's difference of opinion among the scholars.
Yes.
Because you can't.
There's two that I've given you, Jalalain and Maududi.
These are Maududi is not a jurist in that sense.
Okay, so Jalalain.
Jalalain is a mufassir, so he's an exegete. And by the way, it's not, and that's two scholars, that's not one. Okay.
Yeah, no, I just said I would be two.
No. Jalalain.
Quran, however, says don't forbid that which we
Jalalain
says that Sharia prohibits the marriage of under.
Jalalain was written by two people.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant I've
Yeah. All right. Anyway, no, and it was actually it's an exegesis. It's not a book of law.
Yeah.
So it's important with these masail or these matters for it to go to.
Sharia is exegesis. It's not written in actual words
No.
in the Quran.
The way, no. So Sharia law is from the Quran and Sunnah, ijma', etc. Ijma' meaning the consensus.
By saying, well, God forbids this, so we will say if you do this.
No. All right. So the books of Islamic law usually stipulate what are the do's and don'ts in Islam. Sometimes mufassirs can also contribute to that discussion, but it's not most fluidly elucidated in those books.
And what if it contradicts the Quran?
The point, okay, what I'm saying is that the way in which jurists, from an Islamic perspective, they come to conclusion is they look at the Quran, and within the Quran they look at the verses which are not abrogated, and the ones which are clear versus the ones which are not clear. If there's specific verses, when there's general ones or whatever.
I would try and hold you to one specific verse which says that which we have allowed,
Yeah,
no man
I'm
shall
coming.
forbid.
But just so you know the framework. Then you have the hadith.
Yeah.
So after Quran is that, the Sahih hadith. Then you have different gradations of hadith. So Hasan li ghayrihi,
Are
da'if.
those included in their contribution towards Sharia, the Hassan?
Yeah. So that is contributed towards understanding of Sharia. And then after that you have ijma'. Ijma' is basically the consensus of the scholars.
Right. So the scholars are important in their.
So how
when you
the-
said that,
but-
that's scholarly.
Yeah,
you didn't
so
mean
when we
that's
say
necessary.
consensus, is that when they all come together, when they all, no, not the majority, some describe it as a majority, everyone. In language, it actually means everyone.
No, because of all the scholars, there's never going to be agreement among all of them.
Well, that's
consensus of climate scientists say such and such, but that's not all of them.
I understand that's a really good point you're making, and I tend to agree with the sentiment, but there's some things, folks. But there's one thing that I was going to say was that there's some. I wasn't talking about climate change. I'm not a scientist.
My exegesis.
Yeah, but so with ijma', with consensus, there's a discussion on it. But the point is this: is that there are some things which are definitely consensus. For example, the five prayers a day, yeah,
Which
or
are in the
Hajj.
Quran.
Hajj is in the Quran.
That is, yeah.
So, for example, the 5 prayers a day, by the way,
Doesn't it say in the morning and the evening and the middle? So that's only 3 in my counting.
yeah, but the 5 prayers by name and so on, and specifics are not in the
But
Quran.
can we get back to that
Yeah.
which is forbidden?
But you need to get the framework first, right? So,
How long is
because
their big framework?
when people say Sharia law,
Yep.
they're talking about what's gone through that framework.
Yes.
Now,
If
invariably,
it doesn't match the Quran, I would suggest that Sharia is in error in the Muslim
well,
perspective.
yeah, that's obviously, but the point is that the ones who make that decision are scholars amongst themselves,
Yeah, they're
right?
just human.
Yeah, so they all come to conclusions and so on.
Yep.
They have the exegetical schools. They try their best to come to their conclusion and so on.
Yep.
So now that we've got that out of the way,
Yeah.
the question of now marrying. So what is a nikah? A nikah in Arabic language is a kind of aqd, which means it's a kind of agreement.
Yes, like a
So
contract.
yeah, so the scholars of old, they asked the question: is it possible for someone to have a aqd nikah, which is this agreement to marry,
Yeah.
without having consummation or full rights? So, for example, this is where the discussion comes.
Sorry, without already
Without-
having
yeah,
consummate,
so-
you can't consummate something that doesn't exist. Do you mean can they have get married
So
after they've already
no.
had
So, for example, the question is: can two people have this nikah agreement
marriage without any
without? Yeah. So basically, that person's. It's almost. It works in.
like a platonic marriage?
Nah, it just works like an engagement.
Okay.
So the scholars differed on this matter. Yeah, some scholars said, yeah, you can have it. So for example, in the olden days, say for example, I had a child, I had a daughter or something. Yeah.
Within wedlock.
Pardon?
Within a marriage.
No, let's say I had a 5-year-old daughter.
But I'm saying within a marriage context. Your wife had
I had a daughter.
Yeah.
Let's say 5-year-old daughter, and I say, well, I've got cancer, or I'm going to go to war, and I think I'm going to die, and so on.
Yep.
So some scholars said, okay, look, I can draft a nikah agreement between my daughter who's 5
Oh, right.
and a man who's, let's say, 20 years old, but there's no
Just for security.
there's no sexual thing that happens. Yeah.
Or would it eventually become that when she came
So
of age?
when does it happen? Now the scholars discuss this. They say, for example, Ash-Shawkani says this is not allowed. Ibn Uthaymeen of our present time says this is not allowed. But some scholars of the madhahib said they're allowed. So I said that these contracts are allowed. That, for example, if they get to a certain age, let's say 12, 13, 14, whatever age of ability, they call it qudra, which is ability. Pardon?
Ability for what?
Ability.
Ability to accept and
No.
be part of the
Ability to have intercourse.
marriage. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Does that include emotional or like a,
So-
is it just physical?
Primarily, it's physical, but it does include psychological and mental as well. Because if someone is not of mental age, or they haven't got the ability to, or they're judged by the people, their seniors to not be mature for marriage, then surely they wouldn't be put in that position. Okay.
So what I'd ask then is if Sharia forbids marriage, even in maybe 3 of the 5 schools, or if there's any prohibition on marrying a girl before her menstrual cycle begins, yet the Quran says this we find permissible and no man will forbid
Now,
that.
what the Quran talks about is divorce, right?
Yes.
So if someone has, the verse you're talking about.
Abbas, just, I don't know what
Yeah.
you referenced.
No,
but you
I don't know
said-
about Abbas. I'm sorry, I can't follow different. I can only tell you.
That's what I,
Yeah.
that's what I brought to you.
No,
that
all right.
question.
So in chapter 66 of the Quran, وَاللَّائِي لَمْ يَحِضْنَ, which means that the ones who have not menstruated yet.
Yeah, Jalalain says
All right.
because they are
So let's say that means that they've never had menstruation, not that they're pregnant, or which it could also mean. Which it could also mean.
Premenstrual.
Yeah, it could. Let's say
No,
it
not
means.
yet menstruated means they
Yeah,
can't
no.
be pregnant. They're
No.
premenstrual.
Let's say that's correct.
You're
Yeah.
talking about the first and the third category.
No. By the way, some mufassirs have said this means pregnant woman.
No, they're already included in the
Yeah, fine. But what I'm saying is, let's take your interpretation, or the interpretation of some of the scholars as well.
Most of them, I would imagine.
Not really,
Because
because
it says all those who are pregnant.
Fine.
So they can't be the same group of people being discussed. It says women who are pregnant,
yeah.
or women who are too old to menstruate.
Well, that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. So the ones who have not had menstruation yet. So here, this would refer to prepubescence.
Yes.
Yeah. Now this question of prepubescent marriage, you're correct. Is it prepubescence with intercourse or not? Now, here's what I'm saying is that this can't be, because it's haram. I'll tell you why it's haram.
Is it, so that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So I'll give you some references and sources right now. If the woman, no, it's, you can go. No, you go. I don't even think they're in English, so I'll tell you and you can check it out. For example, Kitab al-Insaf, written by al-Mirdawi, who is seen as the final opinion of the Hanbali madhab, in his Kitab al-Hudud.
Most of that was in Arabic. I'm just going to go with all right then.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you just
He says, he lists in what he called the chapter of Hudud, which is punishments.
Chapter of what? Sharia
Punishments.
jurisprudence. And
Chapter
I'm
of
saying not chapter from the Quran.
No, I'm telling you what the scholars have said, and I'm going to give you.
There's a chapter of what I'm asking you? Chapter of Sharia.
Yeah, it's a Sharia book, yeah, or Sharia law, yeah. It's what I'm saying is the final opinion. It's seen as the final opinion of one of the schools of thought, The Hanbali school. 4. He says,
That includes Shia.
no.
So there's
Now,
possibly
Sunni, and then you have other schools within the Shia. Sunni, there's 4 mainstream ones, yeah? Now, having said that, what he says is that if someone has intercourse in marriage with someone who's a prepubescent, the question is not whether they're doing the right or wrong thing. The question is whether they should be flogged or not, whether they should be whipped or not. And he was saying that they should be whipped.
So it's still prohibited, they're just now questioning what's the appropriate
Yeah, so
punishment.
in other words, according to Al-Mirdawi,
So I would come back to how can they prohibit something which the Quran says?
no, but the Quran never talks about, sorry to cut you off.
Find the verse.
No, I know the verse off by heart, right? Yeah, and I can recite the whole surah off by heart. But here's what I'm saying is that from the beginning of that surah, it doesn't say sexual intercourse.
I appreciate that, but
Right,
marriage,
so-
I would say, the consensus of opinion is that marriage includes betrothal, like you were saying, if you betroth your daughter and you feel that you're going to say, eventually, can you take this wife for the moment, can you be a protector, companion, maybe parent figure?
What's your name again?
Okay.
I don't shake hands with women. Man. No, not even. You know this already.
Do I?
Yeah, anyways.
I study you.
You've been here.
Just the Bible.
But here's what I was going to say to you, right? As I said to you before, in Islam, there are these distinctions. Now you're saying in
I'm
culture,
saying the Quran should supersede them.
the Quran doesn't.
From your perspective.
Listen, very clearly, the Quran never says that nikah yaqtadi al-jima', which means it never says.
Is it a generic verse? Is it saying anything that the Quran ordains as acceptable?
Look,
We will forbid that.
Let me say this one more time.
We grow.
I just need to make this very. I want to make this very clear for you, right? I've said to you before that this nikah agreement, according to Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi, he wrote a book called Al-Mughni, and the chapter is Bab al-Nikah. He mentions that nikah is like aqd, which means any agreement, any business agreement, any deal. Now here's what I'm saying to you is that the scholars of old, they debated on whether or not it's possible. So if I got a daughter, I can.
That's betrothal, though, is my
Right.
point. It's
But
not marriage.
whatever.
But marriage ceremony.
The point.
You're saying, can you please?
Yeah. No. How? This is the question. Now, what if she gets to the age and she says, "I don't want to get married. I don't want it." Now, Shawkani says, if she says, one other scholar, he says, if she gets to the age that of discernment,
Yep.
and she gets to the age of ability, and she doesn't want to be with this person who her father suited her with,
Yep.
then she can reject it based on the hadith. Al-bikru tusta'dhan, based on the hadith that the virgin has to be asked for her permission before marriage takes place.
Yep.
So how do they do jama'? Shawkani says that the way he does jama' between the hadith, or he puts them together, and the ayah and so on and so forth in the Quran, is that he says that, okay, you can have a nikah, technically, with someone who hasn't reached the age of discernment yet when she gets to the age, she can decide whether or not, number one. Number two, that he can't have sex with her until she gets to the age of ability.
All the scholars, there's never going to be agreement among all of them. A consensus of climate scientists say such and such, but that's not all of them.
I understand that's a really good point you're making, and I tend to agree with the sentiment, but there's some things...
climate change.
But there's one thing that I was going to say was that there's something... I was talking about climate change, I'm not...
That's my exegesis.
But, so with Ijma', with consensus, there's a discussion on it, but the point is just that there are some things which are definitely consensus. For example, the 5 prayers a day, yeah?
Which
Or
are
Hajj. Hajj is in the Quran.
That is.
So, for example, the 5 prayers a day, by the way,
Doesn't it say in the morning and the evening and the midnight? So that's only 3 in my counting.
yeah, but the 5 prayers by name and so on, and specifics are not in the Quran.
Can we get back to that which is forbidden?
But you need to get the framework first, right? So,
How long
because
is that big framework?
when people say Sharia law, they're talking about what's gone through that framework.
Yes.
Now,
If
invariably,
it doesn't match the Quran, I would suggest that Sharia is in error in the Muslim.
well, yeah, that's obviously, but the point is that the ones who make that decision are scholars amongst themselves,
they're
right?
just human.
Yeah, so they all come to conclusions and so on.
Yep.
They have the exegetical schools. They try their best to come to their conclusion and so on. So now that we've got that out of the way, the question of now marrying. So what is a nikah? A nikah in Arabic language is a kind of aqd, which means it's a kind of agreement.
Yes, like a contract.
Yeah. So the scholars of old, they asked the question: is it possible for someone to have aqd nikah, which is this agreement to marry, without having consummation or full rights? So, for example, this is where the discussion comes.
Sorry, without having.
Yeah. So
you can't consummate something that doesn't exist. Do you mean can they have get married after they've already?
No. So, for example, the question is, can two people have this nikah agreement?
Marriage without any.
Without, yeah. So basically, that person's. It's almost, it works
like a platonic marriage.
No, it just works like an engagement.
Okay.
So the scholars differed on this matter. Yeah. Some scholars said, yeah, you can have it. So, for example, in the olden days, say for example, I had a child, I had a daughter or something, yeah?
Within wedlock?
Pardon?
Within a marriage?
No, let's say I had a 5-year-old daughter.
But I'm saying within a marriage context. A wife had
I had a daughter, let's say a 5-year-old daughter, and I say, well, I've got cancer, or I'm going to go to war, and I think I'm going to die, and so on. So, some scholars said, okay, look, I can draft a nikah agreement between my daughter, who's 5, and a man who's, let's say, 20 years old. But there's no sexual thing that happens, yeah.
But would it eventually become that when she grows
So
of age?
when does it happen? Now the scholars discuss this. They say, for example, Ash-Shawkani says this is not allowed. Ibn Uthaymeen of our present time says this is not allowed. But some scholars of the madhahib said they're allowed. So I said that these contracts are allowed. That, for example, if they get to a certain age, let's say 12, 13, 14, whatever age of ability, they call it qudra, which is ability. Pardon? Ability to accept. Ability to have intercourse. Yeah.
Does that include emotional or like is it just physical?
Primarily it's physical, but it does include psychological and mental as well. Because if someone is not of mental age, or they haven't got the ability to, or they're judged by the people, their seniors to not be mature for marriage, then surely they wouldn't be put in that position. Okay.
So what I'd ask is, if Sharia forbids marriage, even in maybe 3 of the 5 schools, or if there's any prohibition on marrying a girl before her menstrual cycle begins, yet the Quran says this we find permissible and no man will forbid
Now,
that.
what the Quran talks about is divorce, right?
Yes.
So if someone has, the verse you're talking about.
Abbas, I don't know what he referenced.
No, I don't know about Abbas. I'm sorry, I can't follow different. I can only tell you.
That's what I brought to you.
No, all right. So in chapter 66 of the Quran, وَاللَّائِي لَمْ يَحِضْنَ, which means that the ones who have not menstruated yet.
Yeah. Jalalain says
All right.
because they are
So let's say that means that they've never had menstruation. Not that they're pregnant, or which it could also mean. Yeah, it could. Let's say it means.
Yet menstruated means they can't be pregnant. They're
No. Let's say that's correct.
You're talking about the first and the third category.
No. By the way, some mufassirs have said this means pregnant women.
So they're already included in the.
Yeah, fine. But what I'm saying is, let's take your interpretation, or the interpretation of some of the scholars as well.
Most of them, I would imagine.
Not really, because
It says all those who are pregnant.
Fine.
They can't be the same group of people being discussed. It says women who are pregnant, or women who are too old to menstruate.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. So the ones who have not had menstruation yet. So here, this would refer to prepubescence.
Yes.
Yeah. Now this question of prepubescent marriage, you're correct. Is it prepubescence with intercourse or not? Now, here's what I'm saying is that this can't be, because it's haram. I'll tell you why it's haram.
Is it? So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So I'll give you some references and sources right now. If the woman, you can go. I don't even think they're in English, so I'll tell you and you can check it out. For example, Kitab al-Insaf, written by Al-Nadawi, who is seen as the final opinion of the Hanbali madhab, in his Kitab al-Hudud.
Most of that was in Arabic. I'm just going to go with all right then.
He says, he lists in what he called a chapter of Hudud, which is punishments.
Chapter of what? Sharia
punishments.
Jurisprudence.
Chapter of punishment.
Chapter from the Quran.
No, I'm telling you what the scholars have said, and I'm going to give you.
Chapter of what I'm asking you? Chapter of Sharia.
Yeah, it's a Sharia book, or Sharia law, It's what I'm saying is the final opinion. It's seen as the final opinion of one of the schools of thought, the Hanbali school. 4. He says, no.
So there's
now Sunni, and then you have other schools within the Shia. Sunni, there's 4 mainstream ones, Now, having said that, what he says is that if someone has intercourse in marriage with someone who's a prepubescent, the question is not whether they're doing the right or wrong thing. The question is whether they should be flogged or not, whether they should be whipped or not. And he was saying that they should be whipped.
So it's still prohibited, they're just now questioning what's the appropriate
Yeah, so in other words, according to Al-Mirdawi...
So I would come back to how can they prohibit something which the Quran says...
No, but the Quran never talks about... Sorry to cut you off.
Find the verse.
No, I know the verse off by heart, right? Yeah. And I can recite the whole surah off by heart. But here's what I'm saying is that... From the beginning of that surah, it doesn't say sexual intercourse.
I appreciate that, but
right,
marriage...
so...
I would say a consensus of opinion is that marriage includes betrothal. Like you were saying, if you betroth me before and you feel that you're going to say eventually, can you take this wife for the moment? Can you be a protector, companion, maybe a parent figure?
What's your name again?
Kate.
I don't shake hands with women. No, not even. You know this already.
Do I?
Yeah, anyway.
I study you.
No, you've been here already.
Just the Bible.
But here's what I was going to say to you, right? As I said to you before, in Islam, there are these distinctions. Now you're saying in culture.
The Quran should supersede them.
The Quran doesn't. Listen, very clearly, the Quran never says that nikah yaqtadi al-jima', which means it never says.
Is it a generic verse? Is it saying anything the Quran ordains as acceptable?
Look,
we forbid that.
Let me say this one more time.
We grow.
I just need to make this very. I want to make this very clear for you, right? I've said to you before that this nikah agreement, according to Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi, he wrote a book called Al-Mughni, and the chapter is Bab al-Nikah. He mentions that nikah is like aqd, which means any agreement, any business agreement, any deal. Now here's what I'm saying to you is that the scholars of old, they debated on whether or not it's possible. Say, if I got a daughter, I can.
That's betrothal, though, is my
right.
It's
but,
not marriage.
Whatever. But
marriage ceremony.
the point.
Say, can you please?
Yeah. No. How? This is the question. Now, what if she gets to the age and she says, "I don't want to get married. I don't want it." Now, Shawkani says, if she says, one other scholar, he says, if she gets to the age that of discernment, and she gets to the age of ability, and she doesn't want to be with this person who her father suited her with, then she can reject it based on the hadith, al-bikru tusta'dhan, based on the hadith that the virgin has to be asked for permission before marriage takes place. So how do they do jam'a? Shawkani says that the way he does jam'a between the hadith, or he puts them together, and the ayah and so on and so forth in the Quran, is that he says that, okay, you can have a nikah, technically, with someone who hasn't reached the age of discernment yet when she gets to the age, she can decide whether or not, number one. Number two, that he can't have sex with her until she gets to the age of ability.
So with arranged marriage, how would that work?
No, that's different. Arranged marriage is consensual from both sides. So just your question on chapter 66 verse 5. What I was saying is, even if we take your interpretation as the only interpretation, which it isn't, there is more than one interpretation.
3 categories of women.
No problem. Let's take your one as the correct one. So the one of, she's never had she's never had puberty before. They've never had it before, and it's a strong opinion, in my opinion. Yeah, because it says lem. Lem is usually Arabic in the past. Yeah, no problem. You're right. Now the question is, does that mean that there had to be a marriage of sexual? Right. So fine. So what's the issue?
For a divorce in Western law, at least, there needs to be consummation to need a divorce.
But the Quran says,
if I get married and my husband can prove that we have not consummate the marriage, he can just negate or annul that marriage.
Good.
But my other question is it a generic verse in the Quran that says that which we find permissible, you will not forbid?
The Quran also says that if you divorce your wives and you never touched them before, which makes it possible that you can divorce someone that you haven't had sex with.
But is 65:4 speaking about that? Is the verse? Is
no.
65:4
Chapter 60.
What?
Chapter 66, not 65.
66.
Sorry, 65. 65. So it's the Talaq 65. So 65, verse 4. What it talks about is that it says it's a generic verse, right? Generic verse. Agreed.
Well, it's all women of this category.
Yes, there you have it. Yeah. Now, so we say that's a generic verse. The only thing that can do ikhtisas of it is of something which is specifier. So there's 2 specifiers the scholars use. One, the fact that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, if we take the hadith of 6 to 9, that he waited before because he married at 6 and then he consummated 9. So for that waiting period,
lifetime, without bothering him, they could say, no, I know him well enough and I know the Quran to say this is the judgment, like if there's confusion. Is that what you mean?
No. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was alive,
yes,
there was no need for anyone else to be able to do judgment than him.
But when they were reciting the Quran, when they got to the verse that said that which Allah finds permissible, no man shall forbid, surely that is clear and concise.
So what's the problem? Yeah, okay, fine, I agree.
So if Sharia then forbids that,
forbids what?
Anything that's permissible within the Quran.
No, but by definition, Sharia is an attempt to understand the Quran.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So I just know during the previous conversation between you and I heard someone else saying that even though 65:4 says this, Sharia forbids marriage of underage
No. Okay, well that's a discussion that I
know,
yeah, right.
it was just
I'm a different person. What I'm saying to you is clear. Let me be clear. 65:4 wala'i lam yahid. Yeah? Wala'i lam yahid, the ones who have never had menstruated before.
Yes.
If we say that this means that women, girls that are premature, that have not had periods before, yeah, we can accept this, no problem. Yeah, I'll accept that that interpretation. I'll say fine. But does it say in the verse that they can have sex with the man? It doesn't say that.
No,
as I said to you before, the Quran makes it explicitly clear in Surah
permissible to marry without consummation.
No. It says that if in the Quran it says that if you have touched her, then you don't have to give her mahar back. In other words, her dowry back. If you haven't touched her, then and you divorce her, then you don't have to give her a mahar back. In other words, it's conceivable to marry and not touch. Yeah, and that is a form of marriage which existed. It's actually not a marriage. It's in vernacular terms we would refer to as a contract of some sort. So what I'm saying is this: is that it's not. Look, let me just. Yeah, no problem.
No, it's the opposite. He's saying without sex.
Yeah, so I'm saying without sex. Exactly. Thank you very much. Someone who understands a little bit of what I'm trying to say. So here, no, it's fine. Just leave him. He's a young man. He's obviously all the ladies are very attracted to him.
Thank you.
Very attracted. Now,
lying is a sin. You know?
Oh yeah, sorry. No. Some women are definitely. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Okay, so having said that, what I'm trying to say is this: is that so when the Quran says "Wallahi lam yahid," and this is that if we put Jam'a Adillah, or put all the daleels together, which we have to do as part of the method, then you'll find that the Quran says, yes, the ones who have never had, but it also says, the hadith says, "La darar wa la dirar," which is the qaida, which means you can't harm or reciprocate harm, which is the principle that everyone uses to say that you can't have intercourse with someone who's pubescent or unable. The second thing they use is the fact that Prophet waited before he did it with Aisha. So what's the point of the wait?
Are we assuming from that Aisha had menstruated by the time she was 8/9?
She wasn't 8. No. It says 9 in the hadith.
She says 8 in brackets 9.
No, not 8. No, it's 8 in the hadith.
Narrated by her.
But I would
says I was 8 and in brackets.
I was playing with the dog.
No. Can I add something? I think this man.
Sorry, my
however,
you've spent a lot of time
yeah, of course.
Thank you very much.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yep. But why is there no? I mean, you can't know the mind of God, but why is there no category within 65:4 for those marriages that don't contain sexual relations?
Because
it's
because
just about categories.
Okay, so
not types.
We had this discussion before. There's some things that are not like the Quran is like the Constitution. The Quran is like the Constitution, and the Hadith is like the laws.
So it expects exegesis.
Right. So what? You need elaboration. Yes. That's why I say to Quran alone. I actually made this argument that you're making. I said that if you only took a Quranic understanding, then it would be permissible for you to have sex with minors.
Yes.
The only way to get away from that is to have Hadith expansion. Yes. If you only took the Quran, you're right. If the Quran was the only thing, I have a video on this with Quran aloners. If you only looked at the Quran, based on the verse in the Quran 65:4, it would be permissible to have sex with minors. But what I'm saying is that we don't just take Quran. So we take Quran and Hadith. And as a result of that, because of the actions of the Prophet and his saying that you can't harm anyone, the jurists have said, for example, I've mentioned Mirdawi in his book Al-Insaf, and his chapter of Hudud. He mentions anyone who has sex with someone who's under the age of puberty.
Within marriage, or it doesn't matter?
Within marriage. They're whipped. So in other words, they're flogged in public. Now there's a question, the scholars, he said the Hanbali scholars, they differed. Some said that they are whipped and some said they're not whipped. The point is this, is that why is he talking about punishment in marriage? So this is something, what I'm saying is Islam is actually the only religion, in my understanding, especially of the Abrahamic religions, which makes it so explicitly clear that in fact having intercourse with unable people, whether they be minors or not, by the way, because there can be someone who's mentally ill, or by the way, like in the law now, can I ask you a question? If I wanted to have sex with a 75-year-old, me,
legal.
It's legal. But if I had, I guarantee, if I had sex with a 70, sorry, but not from me. So if someone,
to be fair,
okay, you're saying yourself. Okay.
I don't mean.
No.
I mean,
listen, what I'm saying is, but is it illegal?
No,
it's haram though. So. It's haram. If I went and married,
so is eating pork, and that's not illegal.
What I'm saying is that
I understand your point.
The one size fits all policy of 15, 16. And by the way, I don't care about that. I'm not even against the age of consent, but I'm saying that there should be more nuance. I'm saying that.
No, 16 is quite.
Look, no problem.
Right.
I'm saying it's more nuanced in a sense.
Yeah, over 16 and without the emotional capacity. That's
no problem. No problem.
I know, yeah,
I'm saying that. Look, in the day and age we live in now, I actually would posit to you, and I made this argument before with Ali. We said that look, because there's more than one factor. Because qudra is a matter of ijtihad. Qudra, which means ability.
Yes.
It's a matter of ijtihad means. So what ijtihad means? Scholarly ability and to discern. Right.
So there's a lower and upper limit when it's generically acceptable. Sexual relations.
Just one thing, and then Ali's going to say something.
But my other question. So earlier you suggested that the Quran in some places only needs exegesis and the scholars come together, and you said some Arabic words and they come together. So I'm asking over time then. So at the time of the Prophet, obviously there weren't huge schools of Islamic thought or scholars. There were just the companions and believers. So as time goes on, and you mentioned the law in this country, I'm assuming, of consent. Do those, obviously they're human, but do you imagine that those things are heavily influencing their scholarly...
Yeah, 100%. And they should do as well.
Yeah.
Because here's what people don't understand. Here's what people don't understand about, and this is what I wanted to say to you before you... here's what I want to say to you. Look, every environment is different, okay? Islam is not... The Islamic law is not a rock, in the sense that it's unmalleable, unflexible, and...
It's like science in that respect.
In the sense, there is a degree of elasticity, and that's what usul is all about. Is to see, okay, what works well in this situation? What counts as harm in this situation? What counts as necessity in this situation? And the answer to that question is different. So for me now, if I bring someone, my man, I say, look, we go to a primary school, year 6, year 5, year 6. If we go, year 5, year 6, 10, 11-year-olds, If we go to those ages, and I promise you, anywhere in London, anywhere in the UK, are any of these kids ready for marriage? Absolutely not. But the thing is, you don't know about a million years.
Yeah, 5 years.
Because believe me, it's happening now.
They're having sex behind the bushes.
But they're not ready for marriage.
No.
They don't go off and get married.
But me and you agree on this, yeah? All right, so me and you agree on this. Why? The reason why is, listen to this. We would both say that it contradicts their ability,
emotionally.
So it would harm them.
Yes.
Okay, anything that harms anybody is not allowed.
They end up married.
Yeah, it's not allowed. All right, so if it's because the qaida that we have, which is similar to a liberal thing, is
the primary thing that we would agree on is because it's sinful. So God ordains that man and a woman should join together.
This is what I say to you. Look, this is what I call Sharia consequentialism. Yeah. Because ask the question, why is it wrong to have sex with a 1-year-old? Forget about.
I'd explain that. I'd say physically it's damaging.
Perfect.
Morally it's disgusting. Within the context of God's law, God does not prescribe that in any way.
All right, but even if we had that out of the picture for a second,
it's morally.
Jesus does in the Old Testament though.
No, we won't talk about it.
Please don't talk to me.
Okay, forget about Jesus for now. I'm just sorry to say, but we love Jesus as well.
Apparently.
No, we do.
But it's Isa.
It's the same person, but it's just a different name. Yes. Listen,
I'll debate you on
another time. Another day, another discussion.
Another Sunday.
All right, but what I was going to say to you is this: is that look, if you're saying it's wrong, primarily because of the harm, the consequences of it, right?
Because I have the mental capacity
to
look at that and judge
perfect.
that.
No, I totally agree with you, right? So what I'm saying is that if this, we would call it causative reasoning, did not exist, then it wouldn't be wrong.
No, if nobody ever saw the wrong in something.
Perfect. So it's consequentially wrong.
Well,
it's wrong as
intrinsically wrong because it's a gut reaction as well. You
fine.
would say that's disgusting.
But if you can
in
intuit something which is consequentially wrong, something which is intuitively wrong is not always it's not always categorically wrong. Now you can have something. Let me explain. You can have something which is intuitively wrong, but consequentially.
Yeah.
Well, you can have something
intuitively right for drug addicts to take drugs,
but it's consequentially wrong, which means it's wrong because X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
all right.
it's physically
You can
harming.
explain why.
Yes.
Right. Now I'm saying that with that explanation, I agree with you. If you don't have that explanation, then we say it's not wrong anymore.
Yeah.
Therefore, what I'm positing to you is a scientific approach. I'm saying to you that if the person's age is 15, yeah, it could be wrong, depending on that person. If she's 16, it could be wrong.
Not talking legally then. We're
No.
just
I'm talking morally. Morally, look. If you've got a 16-year-old, I'm saying it could be wrong. Yeah, and it could be right.
Yeah.
Depending on that person's.
on the age of the man as well.
You know, not only just that, but that person themselves,
I
right?
mean,
It could be wrong.
a
It could be wrong. It could be wrong. Right. Depends on what the variables. Yeah. Depends on if it harms them or not.
But legally,
do you agree?
Yes, legally we decide that a minimum age.
But legally is a different story, right? Because
Okay,
that's the
but
democratic
civilly,
reasoning.
Within society, we have
Fine.
all decided that 16 is the lower age.
No
limit.
problem.
Before that,
In
it's
this
rape. It's not even a question
Yeah,
of.
that's in this country, by the way.
Yes, and there are other countries that have chosen 15,
Yeah, 14,
whatever,
12,
12.
yeah, no problem. So having said what I'm trying
Some
to say,
places don't have any age.
yeah, exactly, no problem. So what I'm saying to you is this: is that if you say it's wrong because of the harm factor, perfect, yeah. I'm saying to you, I agree with you. Look, Islam agrees with you. Yeah, Islam agrees with you. So I'm saying, so long as that cause is not there no more, then we can't say it's wrong no more, is it?
Each of us is a scientist to approach a relationship
But,
and
look,
say,
look.
I see that girl will be physically
It's not always a
harmed
but it's not always a
or
scientific thing.
emotionally harmed because you don't yet know that.
But
when
society is decide, like you said.
Yes, yes.
So
After years of trial and
yeah.
error
Can I ask you a question? Because if you really think about the, when did this change? It changed in 1929, yeah?
Yeah.
When you had the Marriage Act change from 12 to
previously, within
15.
Victorian times, women didn't menstruate anyway until around
No
17.
problem. But the point is, here's what I'm saying to you. Before the year 1929,
yes.
before that legal paradigm
18,
shift,
wasn't it?
no, it was 12 years old, yeah? If you look at the Marriage Act 1929, it was 12 years old. Before that time, what I'm saying to you is that, was it the case that all women that were having intercourse at that age were harmed?
I would suggest yes.
All of them,
Just
100%.
psychologically.
No, that's not correct. It's just, there's no evidence for that.
You can't prove the opposite.
No,
because you
it's
don't know
not.
all of those women.
The burden of proof is on the one who's making the claim.
You are making the claim.
No, I'm making it.
You're asking the question, were they all damaged? And I would say, okay, on the whole, maybe some who were 15,
No, but that's a claim.
Some who were 15 years old and 364 days, maybe they were fine.
No. So that's a ridiculous claim.
I'm saying in general,
Yeah.
girls under 16 are not emotionally
Not in
or
general, it's
physically
fine.
ready to
But
have a baby. And sex leads to babies because 18 years old, you're physiologically, you've stopped growing. Your womb is full.
You're still thinking ahistorically.
No, I'm not saying it didn't happen.
No, but I'm not saying that
That would
either.
be
I'm saying to you, look, if you get an 11-year-old's testimony in the year
They may
1905,
say it's absolutely great. They may say I got to leave home, I got to go off with this guy, but that doesn't mean it hasn't damaged them, and that damage may not come out until they're in their 40s.
No, but then if you're saying that, no problem. But if you're saying that is the case, that there was wide-scale epidemic harm of women because of that, or men for that matter, then what you have to.
We're having up to 10 children in those.
No, but I understand. But can I just finish this point? The point is that.
I never have a baby, so I don't know why you're pulling.
I've
had one. I know it's quite damaging.
No problem. You have kids, but
I do, but they're
listen to me.
infrequent.
What I'm saying is, you can't possibly prove that all women under the age of 16 are damaged.
I can't.
All right. Now, so having said that,
they're all dead.
if you go to what you have to do as a historian, then is let me give you someone a tip.
Contemporary references.
Okay.
And
Do you mind if I just finish the sentence, please?
Oh, you've been going for ages. Go on.
Now, just let me finish the sentence, and then you can say what you want. What I'm saying is this: is that if you wanted to do a historical project, which is done in many universities in London, in the UK, in the US, and in the Western world, the effects of, let's say, preteen marriage, for the sake of argument, the effects of preteen marriage on women or girls or whatever, on females, use neutral language.
Do you suppose that within those societies that
Can I
find
just
that
finish?
permissible, I'm just an addendum. Do you find that in those societies where it's permissible, they're going to do any studies of damage?
No, just let me finish what I'm saying. You would have to, like what I'm telling you, what you would do academically.
Yeah.
You'd make.
I'm studying. I know what
good.
to do academically.
No, I'm giving you an example, right? So you'd have something like the effects of preteen marriage on X society and on females in X society from time X to time Y. Then you'd have to go and get micro historical reports of like diary entries and stuff. I was so harmed and whatever. Now I'm saying to you, look, if you can produce this evidence and actually take into consideration the counter.
Produce the evidence for all, because that's the part.
That's the point. That's impossible, right? Exactly.
But that's why you asked the question.
Oh, brilliant. So we come to a conclusion now. So if it's not all, then it's conceivable possibly that 1,000 years ago, that a 9, 10-year-old would not be harmed in these ways. That is
conceivable.
That's all I'm saying. That's all we're saying.
Well, if you've got to go on.
Is there any other example?
That's all we need to say, Ali, please.
Also, can I clarify?
Is there any other example apart from?
And you know, regarding this is the Quran.
Oh, so the Quran says that divine law is unalterable. This gentleman's showing me that. So that was my whole point. If God has said it's all right,
to do what? But we're not saying God said it's all right. Yeah, we agree with that.
This argument that's really recently arose is David Wood's video. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah? No. Okay, so we recently saw it, and we're going to be doing the video very soon. So the argument here is
in those.
Uncle, you need to listen. It's very important for you. Yeah. So the argument here is that it's talking about that if a woman doesn't menstruate, it shows that Islam allows.
She's a girl.
Yeah. Well, this is easy. Look, shall I tell you something? David Wood done a video in 22 minutes. I'm going to answer in 22 seconds. 22 seconds.
Look at the camera then.
Okay, are you guys ready?
Please.
Okay, the Prophet was married to Aisha at 6, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, before the Prophet consummated marriage at 9. 8.
Aisha said
No problem. We want to make our guests happy. 8. You know what? Make it 7.5. Yeah, like a job. No problem.
Aisha said 8.
Okay. 7.5.
She said 9 actually.
Then you're lying.
Okay, 8. Okay, 8. Okay. Now, we believe Aisha was. We believe
Let
that.
me finish the point.
Let me finish my point. This is, wallah, it's very easy to be answerable, yeah? If the Prophet divorced Aisha at the age of 7, this Quran verse, you can see in action. Why? Because firstly, they've got a marriage contract. Secondly, the Prophet divorced her before she was menstruating. Yeah? So your argument here that the Quran says that you can...
made this point.
No. I think you didn't understand me.
No,
he's going through other scholars and how they understood it. I'm saying to you very clearly, the Prophet's marriage to Aisha, you know where it says the iddah period for a girl that's not menstruating? David Wood is using this argument to say that basically you can have intercourse with a girl that is...
you could divorce a girl.
Yes.
That's what the Quran says.
Okay, so
I'm brilliant, by the way.
Yes. He's not going to be so brilliant.
Hello, David.
After what Hijab did to him,
I
I don't think he's so brilliant. I don't think he's so brilliant. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, look at this guy's face. Do you remember that moment? Yeah, we all saw that moment. Yeah.
I did. What does
David Wood's career finished, but I think.
Ask David.
David and Shamson.
Madam, can you listen to me, please? Because this is very crucial.
You're him.
No, I'm talking to you. Okay. The Prophet married Aisha at 6 and he consummated at 9. If we believe that she started menstruating at that age, if the Prophet divorced her at the age of 7, she is a woman that's been divorced that is not menstruating.
Listen,
case closed.
my only question. No, well, the case is still open.
Okay, please.
It's in the Quran. It hasn't been abrogated.
According to you, it's
Please let me.
So why you said please address
But
it?
I just thought we concluded quite nicely. But 65 says you can divorce a girl who is premenstrual. It doesn't talk about consummation or otherwise. So I can interpret that, and so can everybody else as either with or without
That's
sex.
exactly what I'm saying.
So it doesn't say a girl who has not yet menstruated and you haven't yet.
Yeah, you would. You're right. But then...
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Pardon?
That's what I'm saying. Your argument.
It's talking about Mohammed. It's talking so all Muslims. This is the waiting period for a lady who's past her menstruation, is pregnant, or during her menstrual.
Or a girl that's not menstruating.
Or a girl. Oh, it says woman.
Yes.
But Jalalain says because she's not old enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is very clear that you guys are trying to say that the Prophet. So in the Quran,
I haven't mentioned the Prophet once, but thank you to the you guys.
Thank you very much. So in the Quran it says that when you divorce, and it said girls.
Aisha, so it's clearly not
Would you allow me to
Did he divorce Aisha?
No. My
You need to have a halala for that.
Okay. So it seems very clear. Either you got my point and you don't like it, because I believe this issue between 6 and 9, the 3-year gap, has been so troubling for David Wood that he had to do a whole video, 22 minutes. You're going to pick him up, don't worry. Yeah? No problem. So what it shows us very clearly is that when you divorce a woman that is not menstruating, what you guys don't understand is that you think when you get married and consummation happens, Islamically it doesn't. You can have a contract, which the Prophet did with Aisha at 6, and if the Prophet decided to divorce her at 8, he'll be divorcing a girl that is not menstrually in the menstrual cycle, so it will fit this Quran verse perfectly.
It would,
because
but it's
so
not about
thank
her,
you.
because he didn't divorce her, and he did sleep with her eventually.
No, at 9 when she was an adult.
No, 8. She said, are you calling her a liar?
When she was an adult.
Are you calling Aisha a liar?
Okay,
7.5 even.
By the way, the hadith says 9.
It says 8 in brackets or 9.
No, but that's in English. I don't know about English. I know the hadith in Arabic.
Is 8
I don't know
and
who's
9 the same in Arabic?
no, it's 9.
Some hadith says
Bent 9.
and some says
Anyway, sorry.
Madam, why are you talking on behalf of